David Brewster here in an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of 38 Special. And 38 Special formed in Jacksonville, Florida in 1974 and was fronted by Donnie Van Zant, younger brother of Ronnie Van Zant from Lynyrd Skynyrd. And these guys definitely had a very distinct, Southern rock influence on their first few albums. And then after, they kind of hit the scene, they slowly started to reveal this melodic, rock sound instead of that kind of gritty, Southern rock sound. So I don't know if Donnie was trying to distance himself from Ronnie, or if 38 Special was trying, to not be, like Lynyrd Skynyrd Part 2. So the band did kind of noticeably push in this different direction. And I've been a big 38 Special fan ever since I was in high school. And there's just something about their music. It's very melodic, very interesting. Definitely a lot of songs with rocking, riffs, great guitar solos. This heavy emphasis on, melodicism or melody. And I like that. It's good grooves, great melodies, great leads, damn good band. So 38 Special's had a lot of member changes over the years. They've been together since 1974, so that's almost inevitable. And Donnie Van Zant actually doesn't work with the band anymore. I think he left the band in 2013. But Don Barnes has been the consistent, original member, vocalist and guitarist with the group. But back in the day, 38 Special had a secret weapon, Jeff Carlisi. And Jeff Carlisi was the guitarist, on all those hits, Hold On Loosely and all that stuff. Whipping out those great leads and fills and riffs and, all this stuff. Great player, overlooked, definitely not a household name. But check out Jeff Carlisi. Aside from looking at some of these classic songs and these classic rock staples that you still hear on the radio today, they still play 38 Special like crazy. But aside from the chord-based things that we're going to look at, this lesson is actually going to be a good lesson in two guitar parts, or multiple guitar parts, layering guitar parts, working with another guitarist. Because that's one thing you'll notice when you really dive into 38 Special's music and look at their guitars. The way they orchestrated their guitar parts, between two guitars, was brilliant, and there's lots of examples of this. Look at any great two-guitar band, Queensryche or Tesla, or, really any of the greats. Obviously Allman Brothers and Skynyrd and, Molly Hatchet and bands like that too. But Collective Soul, there's a whole bunch of examples of this, of orchestrating, two or more guitars together. And this is a great lesson, like if you, work with another guitarist in the band, or maybe you're recording and you're thinking of layering, multiple guitar parts together. This is your lesson. The opening, that's Hold On Loosely from Wild Eye Southern Boys, and there's actually two guitars happening during this intro part too. And the first guitar part, starts with this very famous riff. Definitely hear two different parts. You hear the, kind of percussive, palm muted riff like this. And then you hear those slides, that so it's very subtle, but it's in there. And I'm going to use the TC Electronic Ditto looper to kind of recreate this. But that first part, you're basically sliding from B to A, and then you're grabbing this E power chord. You're going to palm mute that, and you're going to technically move that to a B over D sharp right here. So it's part of a B chord. We're just playing that D sharp and B right there. That. B over D sharp, you're going to move to a D power chord right here. And then you're going to do that again right there. You're going to keep that A on the D string and move that D down to C sharp. So now that's A over C sharp, like this. Literally just kind of moving this, half step motion down like that. As far as those root notes, but we're doing it with chords like this. guitar, you hear it sliding these chords, and it's just basically mirroring what the first guitar is doing. So guitar 2 is doing... And then you put them together and you got something like this. Next is Caught Up in You from the Special Forces album, and once again we have two guitar parts that are playing two entirely different things, but then when you bring them together, it creates this magic. And the first guitar we're going to look at is basically just playing power chords, and there is one of those slash chords that we saw in Hold On Loosely, that B over D sharp right there. But guitar 1's basically doing this. So you may not recognize it just yet, but that's an E power chord. There's that B over D sharp, and then a C sharp, to a B, to an A, and then C sharp to B power chords again. And you're palm muting though, so it's kind of quiet. So that's guitar 1, and then with guitar 2, it sounds like this. So right there, it's basically a little piece of E5, and then a little piece of B major. So we're literally just grabbing B and E, and then B and D sharp right there, like this. And that's actually how the song starts. And then you hear the whole part come in. Something like that. So right there, it's basically that little piece of E5, a little piece of B major, and then right there, you're going to move up and grab this E and C sharp, and that's a little piece of C sharp minor. So we just did a little piece of E5, a little piece of B major, and a little piece of C sharp minor. And right there, go back to that little piece of B, then go down to a piece of A, and that's where you hear him grab that higher part of the chord. So right there, you're grabbing that E and A on the top. And you're kind of mimicking that, you know, a whole step higher. So one more time with that second guitar part. And we put that with the first guitar part, and you've got the whole part there. Okay, up next is Like No Other Night from the Strength in Numbers album, and once again we have two guitar parts playing entirely different things, but when they come together it creates this really interesting, you know, combined guitar part. So guitar 1's basically doing this. So it's kind of boring, but it's like a little piece of C major, that C and E note, and a little piece of E5, that B and E, and then a little piece of D5, that A and D note. So you may not recognize it yet, but that's guitar 1. And then when you combine that with with the second guitar part, you've got this. Really interesting. So right there, we're basically grabbing this. It's like heavily palm muted in there too. So that's a little piece of C right there. And you're playing that against that other guitar. And you know, guitar 2 is doing that. Just arpeggiating that little partial chord. And that's going to change to this, and that's going to look like, you know, a G5 right there. But we're playing that over E. So that's technically going to be an E minor 7 now. You know, if you play it over that chord. So there you have a little piece of C, that little piece of E minor 7. Right there, just bar the 7th fret on the D, G, and B strings, and there's, you know, a D over A, so it's going to D right there, which matches that little piece of D5 we had here. Cool to see how those guitar parts, you know, come together like that. Okay, up next is Somebody Like You, the opening track from the Strength in Numbers album, and it's something like this. Right there, basically, we're starting with this pedaled, you know, G5 power chord, which that's literally the intro. So that's what the looper was doing, just that G5 over and over. So that's guitar 1, I guess you could think of, and then guitar 2 comes in like that, you know, open E, F to F sharp, and then I'm hearing this. But I've seen this song written, like transcribed like this. You know, on the D and the G right there. And he's definitely hybrid picking. You can hear that kind of hybrid picked pluck. But I don't really like playing it like that. I like playing the D note over here on the B string. To my ear, it sounds more like the album too. Plus, you have a little bit more separation between the strings. That way you can pluck and, you know, hybrid pick at the same time. And it doesn't feel as close together as it does like when you're on the D and the G together like that. I mean, you can totally do it that way. It just doesn't sound the same. I think I prefer that way. So after that little... you're doing basically a G over B to a C power chord. Do that little hybrid pick lick again. And then that G over B to a C power chord, and then slide that C to D. And then do it again. Okay, up next is the song Teacher Teacher, which is from the soundtrack to the movie Teachers. I think you can also find this on their Greatest Hits flashback. But I had no idea Bryan Adams wrote this song. I didn't know that. And when I found that out, I went back and listened to it, and I was like, yeah, I can totally hear that's a Bryan Adams song. But it's 38 Special, something like this. like that. So it starts with this really dreary intro part. Parts like that. It's very simple, but that's going to be an F6 sus2. I'm just grabbing that F note with that open D and open G in there. Now the root note F is just going to move to G, and then that's just a G5 now. Chords F, C to G, and then A minor, and you hear this little C, B, A walk down right there, back down to F, C to a G5, and then you hear a mimic of that C, B, A, but this time it's F, E, D on that G chord, and go right back to that F. Okay, up next is Fantasy Girl, which is from the Wild Eyed Southern Boys album, and this is the chorus section, like this. So we're starting with this E power chord, and then you're hearing this little piece of an F sharp minor, and then it's moving to an A over C sharp right there. So you can think of like an F sharp minor bar chord, but you're not really barring, the A or the high E. It's really just those middle, strings. And then you're going to hear that change to the 70s, kind of approved inversion shape right there. That C sharp or that A over C sharp, like that. So it's kind of a quick change right there. And then a D power chord. And then it's a D5 over C sharp. So it's kind of unusual just to move the root down to C sharp right there. And then a B power chord. And right there you're kind of adding this on. And that's kind of flirting with like a B sus2 sus4, just for a second. And then you hear this walk up from A, go to B. And then you do all that again. Last example is Rockin' Into the Night from the Rockin' Into the Night album, and something like this, classic song. We're basically doing this, just ginormous, G5 power chord right there. And I don't mean ginormous like it's bigger than a normal, G5. It just sounds massive. It reminds me of like Godzilla by Blue Oyster Cult or something like that. It just has this huge sound. And it kind of slides it off. And then B flat to C. Bang on that B flat and then move to C. You got this little pickup. Right back to that G, B flat to C. And then you hear this big G5, think Pete Townsend or Malcolm Young or somebody. And then that B flat to C. But you probably couldn't hear it, but in the background there was this, which is guitar 2 during that part. Reminds me of like funk guitar. You can hear all sorts of little parts like that with funk, where you'll have chords mixed with these little single note, melodic lines. So it kind of has that funky, sound. Occasionally he moves over to that B flat too. That's a timeless song, very simple, but it just rocks. All right, that's gonna wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords 38 Special, and definitely an overlooked band that a lot of people don't think about when they think of, cool guitar parts or solos or, orchestrating, guitar parts together. But you should think of and remember that band. It's like, okay, those guys were masters at, taking multiple guitar parts and working and layering them together, recording them together. And it fits. It's almost like pieces of a puzzle, and something's missing until you have that other part. And then it's like, oh, that's, that sounds like the album. And I know for a long time when I was younger, I didn't know that about the band. I just assumed maybe there was one guitarist that was playing all that stuff. And I thought, how is he getting all these layers and sounds? I didn't realize. Of course, I was a teenager back then. But now I understand. It's like, wow, they fleshed all this stuff out and arranged it almost like an orchestra, like part 1 and part 2, and you play them together and it creates, this harmony and this melody and this really interesting and captivating sound, which I love that. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to my lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content material. Thank you.